The following is a presentation from the 9th Annual Humanities Days at Montgomery College. The Human in Humanities, Understanding Ourselves and Others. This year we offered 30 remote events via Zoom. To learn more about Humanities Days at Montgomery College and to access other program recordings, please go to this website.
Welcome to the 9th Annual Humanities Days at Montgomery College. My name is Chip Gladson, and I am the host of today's event, the National Day on Writing. Professor Shayla Atkins and I are the coordinators of the Montgomery College Writing in the Disciplines program. This program is also brought to you by Humanities Days and the Paul Peck Humanities Institute. Before we begin writing, I'd like to ask you some questions in a Zoom poll. If you are viewing a recording of this event, you can jot down your answers on a sheet of paper, remember those, or on a computer document. So go ahead and do that if you're watching a recorded version of this event. And we'll start our poll. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here for a moment so that I can share the poll. While I'm doing this, I also want to note that we have several also participants here from the Writing, Reading, and Language Centers at Montgomery College. And I, as I always do, encourage students at Montgomery College to use this free service. They're wonderful workshops. They're wonderful tutoring opportunities at all three campuses. At this time, they include virtual tutoring and also face-to-face tutoring. Do I have that right, Elise and Shanghui? All three campuses? Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everything's happening. We're up and running at the Writing, Reading, and Language Centers. So I encourage you to take advantage of this free and wonderful service. As I mentioned, we're going to start today with a poll because I'd like to ask you some questions about your own writing. This is the National Day on Writing, and we want to think specifically today about you as a writer and you as a writer, not only for school assignments, but also for your personal writing. So let's start with that. Here's the poll. You should see it on your Zoom screen in a moment. And I will share it now. So take a few moments to answer these questions if you would. As you see, the first question asks you, number one, do you write for personal reasons outside of school or work? This is a simple yes or no question. The next question is number two, how often do you write outside of school or work? So you have these choices, maybe less than once a week, maybe once a week, how about 2 to 3 times a week, or 4 to 5 times a week? How about every day? Do we have any participants who write every day outside of school or work? So this is the personal writing that we do outside of school or work. Go ahead and add your answer to the poll. Looks like we have a lot of contributors to the poll. Wonderful. If you've just joined us, we are first completing a poll to find out what are your practices? What are your experiences with writing outside of school or work? So after you finish those first two questions, here's the third question. In what form do you write or save your writings? So I put a lot of different choices here, a lot of different options, and you can choose more than one. Of course, you may You may write in more than one form, or you may save your writing in more than one form. Here are some of the choices. Do you write in a diary or journal? So I write in a diary or journal. An example of a diary or journal might look something like this. So you may have a different kind of diary or journal. Sometimes they have a little key in front, right? In case you don't want anyone else to read your writing, your personal writing, like my kids. And then another possibility is just a notebook, a simple notebook. So some people may choose to write in a notebook. Do you have a blog? So that's a kind of personal writing in some cases outside of school or work. You write in a blog, or do you write on social media? Again, you can answer more than one of these. You can choose more than one option. So social media, you know, that includes Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, etc. How about other online platforms? So do you write or save your writing in some other online platform, web platform, besides social media? How about old-fashioned letters to friends or family? Anyone still do that? Might be a handwritten letter, could be a computer generated, you know, a letter that you write on a computer. I wrote a letter to my mother yesterday. Felt very proud of myself. So you write letters. And then here also another option is, do you write and simply save your writing on a computer file, on your computer or on your tablet? Okay, so there's one more question then. Question number 4. We have a lot of people who still want to add their answers. So I'll give you time to do that. But number 4, what subjects do you write about? So I'm interested to know, like, you know, what do you write about? And perhaps by sharing some of these ideas, we'll come up with some more possibilities. But for example, do you write in your personal writing, again, in your personal writing, do you write about your daily activities? Or perhaps about memories, your personal experiences from the past, your memories? How about dreams? Do you keep a dream journal, or do you include dreams in the journal that you keep or your diary? Also, opinions. Do you use your personal writing to jot down your opinions? Or how about plans? Do you use your diary or your journal or some other form of personal writing to write down your plans for the future? And of course, because there are so many other subjects, general subjects, that you may write about, I put other here too, and you can add other to your answers if you'd like. So we're still waiting. Let's see if I can update. Still waiting for, oh good, we have almost everybody has answered the first 2, looks like 3. Oh, the math is difficult for me. Okay, yes. Okay, I think everybody's just about there. Can I give you another minute to complete the poll? Again, if you are participating in this event in the recorded version, you're watching the recorded version, you can jot your ideas down on a piece of paper or maybe on your computer file. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And we're going to take a moment now to look over these results. So I've shared the results. Let's see what others have said here. And also I'd like to ask you about some of these topics. So first of all, it looks like, well, about half and half, those people who write for personal reasons outside of school or work. So about 56% said yes, about 44% said no. Okay, great. So we know at least that a little over half of the people do write for personal reasons outside of work. And then we're going to talk today about sort of what can you achieve? What can you accomplish? Why is it, or why might it be a good idea to write for personal reasons outside of just schoolwork? Number two, how often do you write outside of school or work? 56% said less than once a week. And at the other side of the spectrum, we have two people, that's 13% of the group, who said every day. So wonderful, I'm so glad. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. So those people who write every day, there are two of you here, could you tell us, if you don't mind, could you share with us either by unmuting and speaking into your microphone or by using the chat tool? Can you tell us why, or sort of what made you, what brought you to writing every day? What does it do for you, writing every day? So one of those two people, go ahead and tell us. If you said every day, you like to write every day outside of school or work, sort of, what makes you do it? Why do you do it? What does it do for you, generally speaking? Anybody want to share? I know there are two of you out there. Two people write every day at least. No, that's okay. So today in our event today, by the way, I'm not going to force anybody to share, but if you'd like to tell us why you responded in the way that you did on the poll, I'm eager to find out. Okay, well, let's move on then. Let me ask you about this. The third question, in what form do you write or save your writings? So this is really interesting to me. We have all of these different tools available to us, right? We have the electronic tools, the computers, the tablets, the phones. We also have, the old-fashioned paper, maybe a journal or a diary. So I'm interested to find out why you choose the tool or perhaps the paper that you do. So in this question, we had 25% of people said they write in a diary or a journal. One of those four people, could you share with us why you choose to write in a diary or journal? And perhaps also, what does your diary or journal look like? What is it? Why do you do that? Any of those four people want to share? You can type into chat if you would like to. Here are some responses. Oh, we had a late response to the previous question, so I'm just going to bring it up. Professor Greg Wall writes, I'm close to every day, that is, writing for a personal reason. It helps me to get stuff off my chest, so to speak. Excellent. So I can go on with my day and focus less on things that are bothering me. Thanks so much, Professor Wall. I couldn't agree more. So that's a great reason for the personal writing. Also, Elizabeth Benton writes, thanks for joining us, Elizabeth. I like to write to friends who have moved away, especially elderly community members who I don't see often, who have been important to my kids and me. Wow, that's great. So there's another person in the world, there's two of us at least, Elizabeth, who do still write letters. That's nice to know, great. Greg says also, it makes me feel less of a complainer. That's wonderful. So those people who write in a diary or journal, so what does it look like? Can you help us sort of picture what is a diary or a journal these days? Do you go out to a bookstore and buy a fancy diary or journal, or is it take some other form than that? Anybody who uses a diary or journal? A big book with big, nice paper, that's what I prefer. So I have so many from all my days, and I like to use a big one like this, so I don't have to scribble in little small print. I like to write by hand too. Anybody else? Okay, how about notebook? Who chooses a notebook? Any reason for using a notebook? Why do you like to use a notebook? Those 6 people who said they like to use a notebook. Anyone? Anyone? Okay, here's one where we know there is a lot of takers, and that is in social media. Those people who write every day for personal reasons outside of school or work on social media. So what do you write on social media? And which social media platform do you use? You can type your answer in chat, or you can unmute and speak if you like. So which of the social media platforms do you use? And What kinds of things do you share? What kinds of things do you write in this social media platform? Anyone? You can type in chat or you can unmute and speak. Too early to share.
Chip, I'll say something.
Yeah.
So this, it's funny you asked the question about social media because I don't really think of that as a writing outlet. So I'm glad you posed that question.
Yeah.
To kind of help me think. Occasionally, I think anything I post usually to Twitter is just reinforcing something going on campus, like some kind of activity. So again, I don't think of social media so much as my outlet for kind of like what Greg was mentioning, kind of reflection. But I would say in my younger years, I kept journals all the time. And so I don't know if we're mostly faculty and staff on the call, but if there are students, journals pretty much got me through college because it can be a little bit lonely. Even though you're surrounded by people 24/7, it can be a little lonely. So I remember journaling a lot in college, and I still have a lot of those. Some of them were kind of embarrassing to look back at. But anyway, so I feel like that's a good outlet. And then another thing I was going to mention that you kind of jogged my memory. When I was trying to learn a second language, I also tried to journal a lot in a second language. And it was really affirming when I could actually write a journal entry in a language that I was trying to acquire. So just kind of giving you a couple of thoughts to previous questions, not necessarily the social media question.
That's really interesting though. So yeah, in particular that learning a new language and using a daily writing or using a notebook or a journal for the purpose of reinforcing what you're learning at the same time. That's great. I think that's really interesting. What a great strategy too. I think you probably learned the language a lot faster as a result.
I can't take credit. I'm sure a teacher told me we had
to. Right.
But I got to keep the journals.
Right. And there again, the social media thing too, by the way, that's kind of work, isn't it? So it's not so much your personal stuff, but it is in fact, well, your personal and your work now may be merged. But yeah, sharing things about Montgomery College events, that for some of us, that may be part of our work, what we do for work here. So, there's that. So other people that use any of these, social media in particular, I'm thinking about, what do you share there?
So riffing off of what Elizabeth said, mentioning Twitter in particular, I came to Twitter very late because of the bad reputation it has about just being like a cesspool of hate and all this kind of stuff. But I actually have really come to appreciate it as a daily kind of a writing task because of the brevity of it, because you have to edit. And so it's always kind of an interesting, I forget the number of characters that famously it is. I don't remember the numbers, but it's always an interesting project. Just like I have something that I feel like I need to say, and then you have to try to say that within a certain framework. And so sometimes it really takes some editing and revision to get it so you're satisfactorily saying what it is you want to say, but it fits in one tweet. I'm not the type to do like a thread of tweets or anything like that. Whereas Facebook, you can just go on and on and on. And that's, that's a different kind of a writing, just like a dump. But Twitter feels like an actual kind of writing exercise to me. And I've been really surprised that I find it valuable and not super annoying, actually.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thanks, Professor Wall. So yeah, Twitter gets this bad reputation. Maybe it gets a bad reputation in particular for those of us who are a little bit older. But we hear again and again, especially from younger people, but also from scholars and from writers, that Twitter does have this really important role. So in one way, it's a place that lets, especially younger people, be expressive. It gives people a chance to write. Right? So it's not a lesser thing for that, right? It's a great thing to give people a chance to express themselves, all the time, every day. People tweet, all day long. So there's that. And also, Professor Wall brings up another thing. We want to, when we write well, to be more concise. Sometimes we can express the same idea in fewer words. And that's often a good thing, right? We're trying to do that. Maybe Twitter is the solution. Maybe Twitter will help us to achieve that aim by, restricting us to, only a few characters. I guess Twitter upped the number of characters that you're allowed to use. Anybody happen to know what that number is? But in any case, you have a limit, and maybe that limit is a good thing. Maybe it makes our writing more concise. 280 characters. Thanks, Shayla. So, it's not easy to tell others what you really want to say. It's just burning inside you, and you've just got to get it out on social media, and you only have 280 characters to do it. So that's great. Kanye says she uses Instagram to, I'm saying she, by the way, I don't know your gender. I use Instagram to motivate people to go to the gym. Well, that's really interesting. That's another purpose that we did not mention here. Let me scroll down a little bit here to number 4. What subjects do you write about? So, I mentioned these things like daily activities, memories, dreams, but of these personal writing tasks, these ways that we write for personal reasons, another thing may be to motivate others. So I didn't mention that, and Kanye mentions that. So that's a great one. That's really interesting. We think of social media in particular as a place to, share opinions, or perhaps, when we're not so charitable, to spread hate or something, but also to sort of motivate others. I think that's a great addition to what we're thinking about of what we write about. So that's number 4. And some people say they write about daily activities. About 44% of participants say they use that daily or personal writing to write about their daily activities. And I think that's pretty common. So lots of people do that. And, when I was growing up, my sister kept a journal every day of her life, and her journal is entirely and only about what she ate. So every day's meal is in my sister Karen's, don't tell her I said that, is in her diary. So, that's something that's a daily activity. That's important, of course. And memories. So we talked about reflective writing. So reflecting on things that have happened to us personally, things from the past. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we try to come up with some sort of personal prompts also. What ideas we might have, what prompts we can come up with to help ourselves get started on this type of writing. And memories is really a valuable one. Also dreams. I mentioned earlier, some people keep a dream journal. I'm told that if you eat a banana that's full of potassium, somehow that will help you to remember your dreams. I don't know if that's true or not. If we have any nutritionists in the room, then maybe you can help us out with that. I don't know if that's a benefit of high potassium foods, but yeah, dream journals. So when you wake up, you have that journal right there on your bedside, and you can write down that dream that you had sometime during the night. That's an interesting one. Also opinions, we mentioned those, and plans. So, journals are a great place to think about our goals, our dreams for the future. So perhaps somebody here can talk about one of those things, the dreams, the plans. Anybody use this personal writing for one of these? Memories, dreams, plans, daily activities. Anybody want to share? You can write it into the chat, or you can unmute and tell us what you do.
So Chip,
Yeah.
my parents recently were cleaning out their attic, and they found my old diary from high school. And so they mailed it to me because they said, oh, you should read. So they mailed it to me, and I'm reading this. And I found out that one of the things that I said in my diary is that I wanted to live like in Washington, D.C., like in the Maryland, D.C. area. I wrote this when I was in high school. And then when I opened it, it was in there. And I couldn't believe that I had like sort of said that, and it had come to fruition like that. So
where were you living at the time? Where did you live when you were in high school?
New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see, like I had written something down, and that written word had like come to fruition. So that was interesting. It was a memory. So you made me think of that one.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Shalene. So one thing that a diary can be is this treasure of those notes from your previous self, your younger self, and here it's a gift. Yeah, we're older now, and particularly if you have these conscientious parents who are like, here's your, they saved everything, right? and it was worthwhile in the end that they saved everything, because then they can send it to you, and there it is in your hands. And to see that, wow, that is wonderful. I've got a I put together a short number of prompts here before we come up with our own prompts, because that's our real job. And that hits upon right upon one of them. So that's wonderful. That's a really good example. Thanks so much for sharing. Also, Elizabeth says, I write the great milestones of my kids achieve. Example is the day and time my baby took his first steps. Thank you, Elizabeth. So that kind of thing where we're sort of noting those important moments in our lives as they happen, that's another treasure that we can keep with us, for years, forever, and then perhaps also share with our kids later on. Elizabeth, do you plan to share these with your children when they get older?
Yes, I have a journal for each one that when he turns 18, I'll just give it to him.
Oh, that's such a marvelous gift. That's such a wonderful idea. That's great. Thanks, Elizabeth. So you think, by the way, of baby books. In some cultures, we keep these baby books. Elizabeth's in my class, and we do a lot of writing about cultural traditions, right? But in some cultures, we keep baby books, right? But it doesn't have to stop at the baby stage, right? We can also keep adding those milestones even as our children grow. And then, like Elizabeth plans to share it with them when they get a little bit older. So that's wonderful. Patricia says, I write about dreams I want to remember. Great. So how does that work out for you, Patricia? Can you share with us, maybe an example, or how do you do it? When do you do it? Do you do it immediately upon waking up? What do you write it in? How does it work?
I guess whenever I wake up and I can remember the small details, I write it down in my notes and just write the whole thing there. Everything I can remember, my bad.
That's great. Yeah. So, it's hard to retain dreams once we wake up. I guess it's part of dreams, but dreams have such an important role, as we know from psychology. So by getting those dreams down on paper or, on a computer, perhaps, then I think that's also a valuable part of what we might do for ourselves psychologically, emotionally. And that brings me to the next thing that I'd like to talk about here. I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment so I can just bring up another screen, and I'll keep that on hold in the background for a moment. But I do want to just talk about why, we've talked about why we write, what we do with our personal writing, what we may plan to do with our personal writing in the future, what we achieve, what it allows us to do. And I want to talk today in this National Day on Writing, a little bit different perhaps from our previous National Day on Writing topics, to reflect a little bit about this really difficult year and a half that we've sort of all been through, right? So if you're like me, this has been a really hard time. So I think emotionally, psychologically, in so many different parts of my life, I found that it has been a challenge. This COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown and all the isolation and so much concern and worry for others, it really, it's an added weight on our shoulders at this time. So I've thought, well, perhaps we can also think today about the role that writing, personal writing, reflective writing, personal narrative writing may have in helping us get through hard times, like the pandemic. So we're going to think about that, and we're going to look to perhaps some famous examples, what others have said about the value of writing for some of these purposes. So I want to share some of those ideas with you first, and then we're going to do our own writing here, don't worry. So let me just share a new screen with you here. I'm gonna just, as you can imagine, I've got a lot of stuff on my screen. So here we go. And I also want to just note, here's what we'll be doing. So do you see a screen in front of you on your screen, by the way? Give me a thumbs up, someone. Okay. Yep, good. Okay, it's the National Day on Writing. I mentioned that already, but here's what I do want to talk about. We did a poll. We want to talk about why we write. We've done that a little bit already. And also, we want to ask sort of these questions, what should I write about? So if you're blocked, if you don't know how to get started on this personal writing, we want to come up with some ideas for you today. Also, we'd like to do what we do every year for National Day on Writing, and that is to write a short paragraph right here, right now. So we'll try that, and also we'll get some volunteers perhaps to share what you've written. So I mentioned we'd look to some perhaps relatively famous people, more famous than us, and then think about, well, why do others write? And I found 3 different people. I've been thinking about the great writer Anais Nin, because I did read just something from her the other day. And it got me thinking about her life as a writer. I hadn't read anything by this writer in some time, so it was interesting to see her name again and to see some of her wonderful writing again. And here's what Anais Nin has said, or said in the past. We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect. And it sounds like, from Shailene to Elizabeth to others here, that we sometimes are successful in this job, because if Anais Nin says this is one of the purposes of the personal writing that we do, the reflective writing that we do, then some of us are successful. It's happening, right? So I thought that might help us to think about, why would it be a good idea to embark on this personal writing, this reflective writing that we're talking about today? To taste life twice. I like that. Here's another writer. Oh, if I can get my slides to work. I think it's useful also to note, and Professor Walls said it earlier in the beginning of the session today, sometimes we write just to sort of get things off our chest, to feel, let me see what Professor Walls said earlier. I like the way you said this. It was, helps me get stuff off my chest, so to speak, so I can go on with my day and focus less on things that are bothering me. Yeah, so one thing that we can use this personal writing or reflective writing for is to free ourselves up. In particular, perhaps to free ourselves up to be ourselves. So I go to this great scholar, former Shakespearean, and sort of the originator of the reader response criticism in literature, Norman Holland, said, "Every human brain differs from every other." And I think it's a wonderful starting point when I'm thinking to myself about writing. I can write sometimes just to remind myself that I'm not the same as everyone else, and it's okay. I can write to remind myself about what makes my experiences different, what makes perhaps my experiences special, to me at least. So so that's often, I think, a nice reminder. It helps us to remember that it's indisputable, right? From the moments after we are born, our brains begin these separate trajectories through life, and even before we're born because of genetics, right? So each moment that we go on, and each dream that we have, that in some ways sort of multiplies those differences, because we're dreaming about events that only we had. So this multiplier effect, we then become more and more individuals, perhaps mostly if we allow ourselves to. And a personal journal or a diary is a place where we can do that. One more. So another writer here, Anne Frank, you may be familiar with this name. Anne Frank, of course, experienced some of the most tragic, the most difficult times that we can imagine as a young girl too. And lots of people read Anne Frank at a young age to try to get a sense of what might it have been like for a young person to survive the Holocaust, or nearly. So she did not in fact survive the Holocaust, but to go through these years in hiding, and through all of those difficult times, to be reflecting on her experience, to be writing, and to have that writing sort of go and sort of assume such a wide lens, even though, in fact, she was hiding in this tiny hiding space. So Anne Frank said this. She said, "I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn." I often think to myself, if Anne Frank can rise to this level, if she can accomplish this and do it simply by writing, then perhaps I too can weather this storm. I too can sort of get past some of these challenging times. And certainly writing in a journal, writing a diary over the last year and a half has helped me to do that in a big way. So those are some ideas that we borrow from sort of more famous writers, but I think they can help us too. Now, what I'd like to do is also share with you just some samples. So instead of putting together, as we have done in the past at National Day on Writing, a long list of potential prompts for you to write your short paragraph on. And you pick them out of a cookie jar, for example, and at the end of it, you got a beautiful cupcake, delicious cupcake. Well, sorry, I have a cookie jar and I don't have a cupcake for you today, but I can tell you that these are some prompts that you might consider. But I really think what we might do today is come up with ideas of our own. So in some sense, because this has been such an uncommon year and a half, such a different experience, I thought it might also warrant a different way to approach the National Day on Writing. Instead of giving you 50 different potential prompts, I thought I would start with just some really general questions and then suggest to you, maybe we can come up with some other prompts. Maybe we can ask ourselves other questions that might sort of lead us to do more personal writing, more reflective writing, more journals, more diary entries, etc. So here are 3 that I came up with, and I'm interested if anybody would want to share others. Do you ask yourself, you give yourself a prompt just to get yourself started? So here are the 3 that I was thinking about. Number 1, what do you feel especially grateful for today? Sometimes at the end of a challenging week, or even after grinding my teeth through the night, thinking about something that I should have done differently or that I didn't like about the day before. I think Professor Waldheim may share this. I think about, well, let's turn it around and think about what might I be grateful for? What's a positive thing that I could put down and write about? So that's one option that I'm sharing with you today. You can write a short paragraph on this topic. Next, what is one kind thing you can do for yourself today? So if the first one was thinking back, it's a reflection, memory, even if it's a recent memory, then the next one is kind of maybe a plan. So what is one kind thing you can do for yourself today? It's only 9:40, so there's a lot of the day left. Think about one thing that you might do and write about it in a paragraph. And finally, if you could talk to your older self, Shailene, she's done this already, and you can see it works, right? If you could talk to your older self, what would you say? Would you tell your older self to move to Washington, D.C.? Or maybe to move to New York? So you could use one of these prompts to get started, and you can write now. You can do it by hand on a piece of paper, or you can do it on your computer, toggle to a new document file. So start a new file and type your short paragraph there if you like. So you have a record of it, you can save it. Also, I will be asking you, especially if you're doing it on a computer, it might help, to share. So a short paragraph, right now, we'll spend about 10 minutes doing this. And then if you're comfortable with it, I'll ask you to share. So you can share it in the chat. Usually the chat allows you to put multiple sentences there, but if it's too long for that, I'll give you the option also of sharing your screen in a moment, or reading aloud. So go ahead, get started. We'll give you about 10 minutes to do this. It is now 9:44, so take about 10 minutes to write your paragraph, and I will do the same. While we do this, I'll stop sharing too. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left, and I thought that would be a nice opportunity to share, to give people a chance to share what you've written, if you're to have the courage to share a little bit of your writing. And again, another thing we did not mention about this type of personal writing, reflective writing, writing for your own purposes, it's often a private affair. It's something that you do for yourself. And another thing is, what's different between this personal writing sometimes and perhaps academic writing or those writing assignments that you complete for a class, is that we're not so interested perhaps at the moment about such things as organization or even word and sentence level concerns. So this type of expressive writing, often we're most interested in getting our feelings and our thoughts and our memories down on the page, right? So if we want to do something with that later, if we want to sort of try to improve the spelling or improve the sentence structure, maybe we plan to also put this on Twitter, so we're going to make it more concise. But for now, we don't want to worry too much about that. So we can just sort of think about just expressing those thoughts and feelings that are inside. And so for that reason, I'll ask everyone just to respect that. And we're not here to criticize. We're not here to edit or even to review. We're sharing. So anybody want to step forward and share? And by the way, what I didn't mention is I told some of our Writing Center WRLC associates that when we talked about doing this, that I might ask you to share, because the professional writers in the room, they might have something to show us, and that could also not just be from today's writing. So there's nothing about National Day in Writing that says it has to be what you wrote just now in the last 7 minutes. You can share something that you had been working on at some earlier time too. So you can do that as well. Anybody want to share? I know it's a tough thing to jump into, but I'd be happy to hear from anybody now. Anybody want to share? And I'll keep a look at the chat file here. Okay. Great, Shayla. And by the way, Shayla, by the way, I didn't make you a co-host yet, but I can do that. Let me give you all the options. Put it all before you. There you go. Got it.
All right.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So I actually wrote in response to the talking, writing to my older self prompt. And I wrote, I'd have, I think, more a series of questions, but they were, how did you do it all? And when did you figure it out? And when did you feel that you'd figured it out? Because figuring it out, right? Or at least the making it till you fake it, or faking it until you make it concept, right? What all of that begins to look like. So then in response to my own questions, I wrote, the journey to acquiring new identities has been interesting. And more often than not, I feel like a juggler at the intermediate level, confident. I'm sorry. You're hearing one of my new identities in the background. But I feel like a juggler at the intermediate level, confident to juggle the balls I've had for a while, and then anxious when new ones are thrown at me. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great. And I'm guessing also that Elijah may someday get a chance to receive some of these gems of wisdom to be passed down as well. So you might have some ideas right here from today's event, right? Thank you so much for sharing, Shayla, even though you've got your hands full. Okay, so let's see. We've got some others here. Great, I'm going to share. I'll share it with just those people who said that it was okay. And I know that some of you have to run too. So keep that in mind here, that some people have to run. And I'm also just going to use our whiteboard here to do some of this. Actually, I'll use this. Oops, that's for in a moment. And sorry for the moment. You may have noticed this. It's one of my pet peeves, but Zoom will use some of the keystrokes, but only sometimes, right? So if you're going to copy something from chat, that's what I like to do sometimes. It makes you work for it a little bit. So I'm going to use this to share. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so I don't know if you're still with us, Shenghui, but you can read aloud if you like, if you want to look at the screen and do that, or somebody can read for you if you've got to run.
Well, I will just read it and then I had to run.
Got it.
You know, fear of hearing people's feedback. But the truth is I had to go to the orientation.
Got it.
So I feel grateful today. Thank you, because my daughter is getting better now. Over the weekend, she has suffered from sore throat and coughs. The past couple of nights, it pained me as a mother to see her languish with the sickness. That was not my sweet-spirited daughter. This morning, as I was preparing her breakfast, I noticed much improvement. I thank God for that. For this, I cannot be more grateful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So far, the people who have shared have been the people with their hands full, it sounds like. So thank you so much for going above and beyond, Shenghui. And that's great. And also, it's good to know that your daughter is seeing some improvement. That's important. So thanks for sharing. That's great.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share? So Elizabeth, great. Let me just briefly share. May I share, Elizabeth? I'll put your short paragraph here and allow you to read it if you would like. Go ahead, Elizabeth, if you'd like to read.
I feel thankful today for the life and good health of my kids. Even throughout this whole Zoom meeting, their noise and laughter keeps me rest assured of how healthy they are.
Wonderful. I think we have a theme here, and I can hear someone in the background also just reminding us of what we can be grateful for. So that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Elizabeth. That's great. Okay, so we are running out of time, and we want to keep people on schedule because some people may have to get to class. While we do that, what I want to do here is there is a survey which Humanities Days would like you to complete, if you don't mind. And an easy way to do that is if you look in chat right now, you'll see a link. That is a live link in chat that comes from me. If you click on that link, it should open in a new tab on your browser. So you can click on that link, https://www.surveymonkey.com. That looks familiar, right? And then the code. Click on that link if you would. And if you have a moment, please fill it out. It's pretty short. And so that we can get ideas for how we can offer some great programming in the future as well. I want to thank you so much for joining us today for National Day on Writing and for the Humanities Days events generally. And remember, it goes all week long. So you can go to the Humanities Days pages and look for an event that interests you. There's more today. There's some on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay, anything I'm missing? Co-hosts, I think we did everything. Did we do everything? Yes, we did everything. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you soon, ideally in person, and let all of these old times get behind us. In the meantime, keep writing, and I think it's a good strategy to help us get through these tough times. Okay, thanks again. Thanks, everyone.